This one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Franz in Detroit.
Friends in Detroit?
Franz.
Well, you say friends and I say Franz.
Hey, Jim. I was hoping you could settle an argument I've had with some friends of mine the other night. A debate came up as to how tough Bruce Lee really was. And a question was posed, who would win in a shoot, Bruce Lee or Hulk Hogan?
Oh, good God.
Personally, I don't think it would be much of a contest. I think that in a street fight, that Hogan, although not known for being one of the toughest wrestlers, would still crush Bruce Lee with ease.
Oh, fuck.
When I suggested this, my friends looked at me, not only as if I was completely out of my mind, but as if I had insulted their mothers along with the myth of Bruce Lee. And the worst part is, since they knew how much of a wrestling fan I was, they chalked it off as me just sticking up for the fake fighting I watch on TV. Eventually, I had to bow out of the conversation because I was not going to convince them. I was amazed at how big of marks, I don't know how you're going to say that. I was amazed at how big of marks they were for Bruce Lee, someone who I view as an actor more than anything else.
What?
And they were probably amazed at how big a mark I am for professional wrestling. I'm not knocking Bruce Lee. I know you're a Green Hornet fan, and I can agree. He possessed great strength and agility for someone his size, and his speed was unmatched. But I feel much of his lore is simply that Hollywood folktales used to sell his movies and persona, and I simply cannot see him doing any real damage to a 6'6", 303-pound, 24-inch python, Hulk Hogan. Jim, can you settle this for us once and for all?
Yes. Go crawling back to your friends and ask for beg for their forgiveness. No, and come on, and it's not even because it's Hulk Hogan, right? Let's just be honest. If it was Bruce Lee and Brock Lesnar, that would be a different story, and both in their prime, right? Because then you're somewhat comparing apples with apples. We're not talking about Bruce Lee, the actor, versus Hulk Hogan, the worked pro wrestler. We're talking about a guy who was probably not only in some of the peak physical condition that a human being can be in, but also was a martial arts instructor that developed his own offshoots and methods and fighting techniques, that he was sought after by people in Hollywood and different people around the world as a trainer and tutor. And the way that he he wasn't an actor that studied karate. He was a martial artist that got into acting in television because he had been a child star in Hong Kong. So he had some acting and television movie background, but more importantly, as an adult, it was because of his prowess as a martial artist that he then later on got not just the role as the Green Hornet, but the movies with Raymond Chow, the Kung Fu movie producer in Hong Kong, where he became, he was legitimate. It wasn't like, those early 70s Kung Fu movies got ridiculous, almost like wrestling now, with the trampolines, and the guys would be jumping up and, slicing a guy's head off, grabbing it, fucking pulling the goddamn, throat out and playing Dixie on it by the time he landed in slow motion, all this shit. But Bruce Lee was fairly legitimate. Hulk Hogan is a bodybuilder and weightlifter. I have no knowledge of any high-level athletics sport that he played, that he was in. He was a bass player in the band, right? He had no legitimate wrestling training, no legitimate fighting training. So it's not even out of the way to say that, yes, Bruce Lee, even at 150 pounds and Hogan at 325, Bruce Lee could have somehow taken him down and tapped him or incapacitated him fairly easily and fairly simply. If it was Brock Lesnar, then when you have two people that are highly trained in legitimate fighting and there's a massive size difference, that's another thing. But I'm not knocking Hogan saying this, but has anybody ever floated the idea that he had any training, and I don't care how big you are, against somebody that really world-class knows what the fuck they're doing? No. It's just not going to happen that way. Am I delusional here, Brian?
So are you saying that spending a few months with Hiro Matsuda isn't enough to defeat Bruce Lee?
You know what? If spending a few months with Hiro Matsuda was enough to defeat Bruce Lee, I bet you Hiro Matsuda would have tried to beat Bruce Lee. No, ain't going to work. Sorry, folks.
It kind of goes the opposite way now. For so many years, everyone thought Bruce Lee was the ultimate kick-ass guy out there. And now, since, UFC and everything else, it's kind of gone the other way, where people are like, well, he was just a movie star. He didn't know how to fight. He didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
He's a small guy.
And actually, as people get smarter about fighting, they get stupider about Bruce Lee. When he couldn't get a job in entertainment on television or movies, and he made his living more by training martial arts, and his students went on to be quite well thought of as well in that era, as far as there was no MMA per se, but as far as the martial arts world. And and it wasn't Jackie Chan funny stuff either. I bet Jackie Chan could probably kick the shit out of Hulk Hogan if both were in their fucking prime at the same time, but it wasn't the Jackie Chan funny stuff either. It was legitimate shit. So no, Bruce Lee was not going to go and win the goddamn Olympics, but he could kick the shit out of, in wrestling or whatever, but he could kick the shit out of Hulk Hogan, whether it be, well, pretty much any kind of contest. Except if you're, okay, everybody here's baseball bats. Well, now it's a different story, but hand to hand, I can't imagine any way that Bruce Lee could not have dispatched Hulk Hogan.
Well, Vince would have never booked it because of the size difference. Who do you think would win, Hulk Hogan versus Bolo?
Well, wait, he booked Floyd Mayweather against Big Show, didn't he?
Oh, that's true. That is true.
So, and guess who he booked to go over in a boxing match? Am I delusional of that, or did Floyd Mayweather beat Big Show in the boxing match?
I believe so.
Because it's boxing. And that's even more far-fetched than the idea of Bruce Lee beating Hulk Hogan, because even though it was boxing, still look, Big Show and Floyd Mayweather, but probably if you had to adhere to boxing rules, that's the way it would have eventually have happened, because Big Show his tongue would have been lolled out like a long red necktie, and then Floyd Mayweather could just fucking tee off on him until he gave him brain damage.
All right. Well, another question. This was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Eli in the Bronx. This is a question based on something in Al Snow's book. I heard a story about Al having an affair in Smoky Mountain. When he wanted to end it, the woman blackmailed him, and then when he left the area, she contacted WWF and told them that he forced himself upon her and impregnated her. Later on, her car was found abandoned with blood in it. And it turned out she faked her own death and was later found in the Carolinas. Is this a legit story? Did Al Snow ever talk to you about it? Or do you know anything about this?
Now that I have heard that, was there something there? I can't remember. It almost reminds me of something that there could have been something there, but I can't remember. So that was a shitty answer.
Yeah, we can't end on that question. Hold on. Let me pull up another one.
To be honest, the only reason I remember it is because they found a blood in the car and somebody faking something that happened to them. That's why I remember it, because it wasn't odd for fucking women to start chasing the guys when they left territories or hounding them or trying to get there. Back then, it was hard to get people's home phone number, but sometimes guys would get calls from girls at their house, and that didn't get over well. with the rest of the house, but that's the only reason it makes me remember something, because some part about faking some catastrophe. But that was after Smoky Mountain.
All right, well, let's get this. This will be the last question this week.
That's what you said before.
Well, the answer sucked.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, you admitted it.
That's better questions.
You admitted it.